Thanks to Thrustmaster for sponsoring today's video and for sending over their latest AVA add-ons for us to check out on the channel, which includes the long-awaited Damper Plus. So let's not waste any time. Now, a really quick refresher on the Thrustmaster AVA Base for those that missed the review we did last year. It's Thrustmaster's next generation of joystick base, which is highly customizable. You can change out the springs to get the right level of resistance for you. You can then fine-tune the tension on those springs, and you can swap out the cams to change how the stick feels in motion. Bottom line though, I really liked this joystick when I reviewed it last year, though to my surprise I did get quite a lot of pushback in the comments along the lines of, for that money it needs to have force feedback, to which I thought, really? For $249 you expect force feedback? I mean, it kind of feels weird calling a joystick base that costs £249 a budget option, but relative to the force feedback options out there on the market, its price really does start to look very appealing while still offering a lot of ways to customize it via springs and cams, and now of course the fancy new adjustable dampers. I think given where it's competing in terms of price point, its value proposition was and remains strong. Comparing it directly to the Warthog base that it kind of replaces, yes, it obviously does cost more than that, but then you do get a lot more customization in return. Speaking with the team at Thrustmaster last year, when we reviewed the AVA Base, they were kind of explaining to me how the AVA Base is designed to be part of a wider ecosystem, and today we're seeing the first steps in that journey. So, what have we got? We'll start with a nice easy one, the AVA Extension, and as the name suggests, it adds a little bit more height onto your joystick, 4.7 inches or 12 centimeters to be exact, and if you loosen up these two screws, you can twist it and the angle of your stick can change by up to 30 degrees, which is pretty cool. Now, if you're sticking a big, heavy, mostly metal Thrustmaster stick on top, the laws of physics are quickly going to become apparent to you, as we've got a lot of weight swinging around up there, which can obviously create quite a bit more leverage versus the stick being attached directly to the AVA base itself. As such, Thrustmaster have chucked in a couple of heavy springs to pop in the AVA base to offset this. The AVA base came with 3 sets of springs out of the box last year when I reviewed it, a light, a medium and a heavy option, and these springs that they provide are heavier still. To swap them out, take off the top of the AVA base by removing the 4 larger screws, then you can loosen up the whole spring mechanism, which removes the tension on the springs that are already in there. Lift them out, then hook your new springs into place and then retighten the mechanism and you're done. And it's really up to you how tight you go with the springs here, as obviously this will directly impact how the stick feels. It's also worth considering that as you start making the stick higher with these extensions, the range of movement will obviously increase as the stick is physically further away from the pivot point inside the AVA base. Now, this is where you might want to consider using one of the masks originally supplied with the AVA base. We've got a small, a medium and a large. I would probably recommend using the small one here, particularly if you opt to use the new AVA Curved Extension, which adds more height again, especially if you put it on top of the regular extension we just looked at. I found the curved extension on top of the regular extension to work really great as a floor-mounted solution, where you kind of sit and fly with the stick between your legs. It does put the stick at a 30-degree angle, similar to how the regular 4-inch extension gave this option, but with the curved extension, it's non-optional. It's always at that angle. An ergonomics thing, I presume, it would make sense. It did feel very nice to fly with when it was set up in this configuration. The curved extension comes with those same heavy springs that we saw with the 12cm extension. Keep in mind though, given how the weight of the stick is now much higher with the curved extension, there is a lot of leverage at play, so I opted to tighten up the springs to their maximum, which I thought worked really well. Next up, we've got a new set of cams, and this is another one of the AVA's party tricks whereby you can switch out the cams to dramatically change the feel of the stick. It's nice to see Thrustmaster continuing to add different types of cams to appeal to different use cases, and here we've been given a dual pitch cam. You get 3 cams in the box, 2 are labelled FBW, fly-by-wire, and 1 is labelled dual pitch. The dual pitch is designed to be used on the Y-axis only to reproduce the feel of the Mirage 2000 fighter jet, which has a very different feel on the Y-axis versus the X. Of course, the dual pitch can be used with other fighter jets of the same period if you fancy it, but it really is designed to be specialised on the Mirage 2000. Obviously, I'm no Mirage 2000 pilot, but I could definitely feel the difference between the cams I've become used to on the AVA up until now and these new dual pitch cams. We need more like this, in my opinion. Imagine if Thrustmaster teamed up with Airbus to make a specific set of cams and springs for the A320. How cool would that be? All right, last but not least, we've got the Damper Plus add-on. Now, for me personally, this was what excited me the most when Thrustmaster reached out to tell me about all of this stuff. As when I was reviewing the AVA Base last year, I had a great time with it, except one thing I noticed was there was a bit of stick wobble. If you were to, say, tap the stick, or if you were to pull the stick all the way back and let it go, it would kind of swing back and forward. And with these new AVA extensions that we've just looked at, this effect is, going to be exacerbated given that the weight of the stick is now further out from the pivot point in the base of the stick. Now, when I first noticed the wobble during the review process last year, I was initially very concerned, but actually when hand flying with the stick, I didn't find it to be much of an issue at all. But I completely get that it's not a good look, especially for a stick in this price range. And having the option to firm things up as you see fit is obviously a very welcome addition. So, first things first, we need to get the old dampers out. So, take off the top of the AVA base to reveal the internals. Then we can loosen the springs to release them from their mechanisms. There's one damper per axis, so we'll start with the X-axis. We'll unscrew the old one, grab your new one, slot it in and screw it into place, but don't over-tighten the screws. The same principle applies on the Y-axis, except you'll have to kind of tilt the stick over to get access to the damper, as well as popping off a little plastic cover that goes over it. Now, for a fair test, I wanted to try out these new dampers with the stick in the same configuration as it was when I reviewed it last year. So no AVA extensions in use at the moment, and we've got the same springs in there that I used during the review process last year. So when I first got these new dampers installed, I thought I better stress test it. So I pulled the stick back and I let it go, and it was pretty much the same as before, perhaps even worse, which raised a bit of an eyebrow. But then it dawned on me that these are adjustable dampers, and I hadn't adjusted them yet. There's a screw that you can tighten or loosen, and that will impact the strength of the damper. So now if I tighten up the dampers, you can see that the return to center is so much more graceful, which I think is going to make a lot of you very, very happy indeed. Now keep in mind that you're going to want to adjust the damper based on the springs you have installed, and whether or not you have the new AVA extensions in use as well, because it's not a one and done solution. This is very adjustable by design, so spend the time dialing it in and don't freak out like I nearly did if it's not what you expected right away. Now, if we put our heavy springs back in the AVA base and we tighten up the dampers and we add our AVA extensions, what do we have? Well, it's not bad at all. You've got to remember that with the weight of the stick being so high like this on the AVA extensions, more movement is inevitable, but it's much, much more under control compared to what we had earlier when we had the default dampers installed. On the other hand, maybe you've got a lighter stick, maybe like this Airbus side stick here that I've got from FS Projects, which is pretty much made of plastic for the most part, so therefore much lighter. Therefore, you're going to want to dial back those dampers, as the weight of the stick can obviously have a massive impact on how things feel. I think the key takeaway here then is that you've got a lot of tools in your armory, and it's not a one and done solution. It's not a one size fits all, which is kind of in keeping with the spirit of the AVA base really. You can change the cams, you can change the springs, you can adjust the tension on the springs, and now you can adjust the dampers too. It's very, very cool. So then, a nice set of add-ons for the AVA base, and it's nice to see an ecosystem of parts coming together, and I'd like to think this is really kind of a first step in a broader journey for Thrustmaster as they continue to expand their AVA offering with more like this going forward. I'll leave links in the video description if you want to learn more. For me personally, as some of you might know, I do all of my simming from a garden shed, and I'm in the process of repurposing some old PC parts to build a PC for in the house, and I think I'm going to have the AVA with all of these add-ons as part of that setup, and maybe just maybe have a go at trying some DCS with the kids, as they've recently shown a slight interest in the simming that I do. I probably won't put it on the channel though, as goodness knows YouTube punishes me enough already when I step outside of my lane, but I figured it'd be nice just to have something that's just for me, just for the fun, no pressure of making content or anything like that. I mean, I'm not complaining, of course. I love doing what I do here on the channel, but I think it's important to have a balance with things and not turn everything into a content making opportunity. I don't know. I mean, let me know if you'd like to see some DCS on the channel. I would be curious to know how you'd feel about that. Anyway, before I turn this into a mini therapy session all about me, I'm going to wrap this one up. Thanks again to Thrustmaster for sponsoring the video and for sending out their latest round of AVA goodies. I'll leave links in the video description for you. And like I said, more like this please, Thrustmaster, particularly with springs and cams for specific aircraft. Thanks very much for watching, folks, and until next time, you all look after yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, happy flying.